The sound of shattering objects echoed down the quiet suburban street. At 74 years old, Dorothy Silvera watched with misty eyes as her family photographs were tossed out of the second-story window as if they were mere garbage. The picture frame containing an image of her late husband, Victor in his military uniform, landed on the well-manicured lawn, shattering the glass into dozens of sparkling fragments under the afternoon sun. "That too, Karen. That too," Dorothy murmured to herself as she slowly bent down to pick up the photograph. Her trembling fingers carefully removed the shards of glass from Victor's picture. That photograph was 46 years old and one of the last taken before he left for his final mission. More items continued to rain down from the second floor. Old books, clothes, documents, mementos from a lifetime. Dorothy stood in the garden, speechless with no tears left, just a vacant stare as her belongings scattered across the lawn she had planted herself when they moved into that house. Neighbors began peeking over fences, some with their phones out, capturing the absurd scene unfolding on that Sunday afternoon. "Mom, you've had enough time." The deep voice of Thomas rang out behind her. "We're just speeding up the process." Dorothy turned slowly to face her 45-year-old son. It was hard to recognize the smiling boy she had raised in the hardened face before her. Thomas stood with his arms crossed at the garage entrance, watching the two men hired by Karen toss his mother's belongings out the window. "This is my house, Thomas," Dorothy said with surprising calm. "I paid for it. Your father and I saved for years to buy it." "It was your house," Karen corrected, appearing beside her husband. Her perfectly styled blonde hair and impeccably painted nails contrasted sharply with the chaos surrounding them. "Now it's ours and we need the space. You understand, right, Dorothy? It's just stuff. At St. Raphael you won't need any of it anyway." A chill ran down Dorothy's spine at the mention of the nursing home. So it was true. She had found a brochure for that place among Karen's documents weeks earlier, but had refused to believe her own son was planning to send her there. "Thomas," Dorothy looked directly into her son's eyes, "I carried you in my arms when you were just 3 weeks old. I stayed up all night when you had a fever. I worked 2 jobs to pay for your college. Is this my reward?" For a moment, Dorothy thought she saw a flicker of doubt in Thomas's eyes, but Karen quickly placed a hand on his shoulder, and any hesitation vanished. "Don't do this." "Mom," Thomas said, his voice now mechanical, "don't make this harder than it already is. St. Raphael is a good place. You'll have company your age, activities. It's for the best." "Best for whom?" Dorothy asked, straightening her shoulders despite the pain in her back. "Have you searched through my documents looking for money you think I have hidden? Have you checked my miserable pension, as Karen likes to call it?" Karen's expression hardened. "Don't be dramatic, Dorothy. This is for your own good." One of the hired men came down the stairs and approached Thomas. "We're almost done upstairs. There's a jewelry box that this lady," he pointed at Karen, "said to leave in the house." Dorothy felt her heart tighten. "My jewelry? The jewelry Victor gave me?" "It would be stolen at the nursing home," Karen replied with a forced smile. "We're keeping it for your safety." It was then that Dorothy saw a sleek black car park across the street. Out stepped her brother Oscar, a 72-year-old man with an impeccably military posture, followed by 3 other gentlemen who looked equally disciplined. A discreet smile appeared on Dorothy's lips. She had made a call 3 days earlier when she realized that Karen and Thomas weren't bluffing. Oscar, her younger brother and a retired Army general, had promised to be there when the time came, and the time had come. Thomas placed a hand on Dorothy's back, gently pushing her toward the car parked in the garage entrance. "Come on, Mom, everything's set at St. Raphael. They're expecting you today." Dorothy allowed herself to be led, showing no apparent resistance. With each step, memories of the house flooded her mind. Thomas's 10th birthday celebrated in the backyard. Christmas nights around the fireplace, the last breakfast with Victor before he left for the mission from which he never returned. As they reached the sidewalk, Oscar and his companions crossed the street toward them. Thomas stopped abruptly as he recognized his uncle, whom he hadn't seen in years. "Uncle Oscar?" Surprise was evident in his voice. "What are you doing here?" Oscar, with his close-cropped white hair and upright posture reflecting his years in the army, ignored his nephew and warmly embraced his sister. "I'm right on time from what I see," he said, looking at the lawn covered in belongings. "Who are these people?" Karen asked, her tone revealing irritation. "Dorothy, did you invite strangers to our home?" Oscar turned to Karen with a look that made her instinctively step back. "This is not your house, young lady, and we are not strangers. Allow me to introduce Colonel Robert Mendonça." He pointed to a serene-looking black man. "Major Samuel Albuquerque." He indicated an indigenous man with visible scars on his face. "And Captain James Rocha," he concluded, pointing to the youngest of the three, a man in his 60s. "We're old friends who served together," Oscar explained. "And we're here to help my sister." Thomas stepped forward. "Uncle, I appreciate your concern, but we're handling the situation. My mother is becoming senile and needs specialized care. We've already organized everything." "Senile?" Oscar raised an eyebrow. "Dorothy, have you been diagnosed with any cognitive condition recently?" "No," Dorothy replied firmly. "My doctor, Dr. Peixoto, gave me a clean bill of health last month, so I am perfectly lucid." "She's exaggerating her condition," Karen quickly interjected. "Last week she left the stove on." "That's a lie," Dorothy countered, her voice steady. "I've never left the stove on in my entire life." Oscar gestured to Captain James, who pulled out a folder from his briefcase. "Thomas, Karen, I have copies of some documents you should review before you continue with this house plan." Thomas reluctantly took the papers and began flipping through them, with Karen craning her neck to see as well. Their expressions gradually shifted from irritation to shock. "These are," Thomas stammered. "Deeds," Oscar completed. "For the house we're in the name of Dorothy Silvera, along with bank statements, property documents, and the lifetime military pension contract of the late Captain Victor Silvera." A small crowd of neighbors had formed at a respectful distance. Among them was Donna Lourdes, an 80-year-old woman who had lived next door for decades, watching everything with evident indignation. "You may not know," Oscar continued, raising his voice slightly so everyone could hear, "that my sister receives a monthly pension of $3,000. That she owns, in addition to this house, 3 other properties as investments, and that her current bank balance is $245,000. Karen's eyes widened, and her face visibly paled. "A net worth," Oscar paused for dramatic effect, "of over $500,000. A murmur swept through the small crowd. Dorothy kept her gaze fixed on Thomas, whose face now showed a mix of confusion and shame. "Mom," he began, his voice almost a whisper, "why didn't you ever tell me?" Dorothy felt a deep sadness but responded with dignity. "Because I wanted you to become a man on your own merits, Thomas. Not because of your father's money." Karen's expression wavered between shock and calculation, as if quickly reassessing the situation. It was then that Major Samuel stepped forward, holding a phone. "General, the lawyer is on the line. Do you want to speak with him now?" Oscar nodded and took the phone. "Mr. Fernandez?" "Yes, we're here. The situation is exactly as we suspected." "Yes, they were trying to forcibly remove Dorothy." "Yes, we have witnesses, perfectly. We'll be waiting for you then." Meanwhile, Colonel Robert approached the hired men who were removing Dorothy's belongings. "Gentlemen, I suggest you stop what you're doing immediately. You are participating in an illegal eviction and abuse against an elderly woman." The men, visibly uncomfortable, looked to Thomas and Karen for guidance. Thomas, still stunned by the revelations, simply shook his head. "You can stop. It seems there's been a misunderstanding." The living room, which just minutes before had been the scene of a heated argument, was now steeped in tense silence. Dorothy sat in her favorite armchair, the same one Karen had suggested donating weeks earlier, while Oscar stood beside her like a silent guardian. Thomas and Karen occupied the opposite sofa, avoiding eye contact with anyone in the room. Oscar's friends had strategically positioned themselves, Colonel Robert at the main entrance, Major Samuel near the stairs, and Captain James by the window overlooking the garden, where Dorothy's belongings were still scattered. "I think we should start by gathering your things from the garden, don't you?" Oscar suggested, breaking the silence. "Thomas, Karen, you should help." Before they could respond, the doorbell rang. Colonel Robert opened the door to reveal a middle-aged man in a sharp suit with a leather briefcase. "Mr. Fernandez, attorney," he introduced himself. "I'm here at the request of General Oscar Silvera." Oscar gestured for him to come in. "Please, have a seat." These are Thomas and Karen, my nephew and his wife, and this is my sister, Dorothy. The lawyer greeted everyone with a formal nod and sat in the chair indicated by Oscar. He opened his briefcase and pulled out some forms. Mrs. Silvera, he began, addressing Dorothy, based on what your brother has told me and what I observed upon arrival, we have a clear case of elder abuse, attempted eviction, threats, and possible misappropriation of assets. Karen straightened up, her face now a mask of indignation. This is absurd. We were just taking care of her. Tossing her belongings out the window? He questioned Mr. Fernandez, raising an eyebrow. Confiscating her jewelry? Enrolling her in a nursing home against her will? She needs supervision, Karen insisted. She's confused. Dorothy, who had remained silent until now, looked directly at her daughter-in-law. I heard you on the phone with your friend Patricia last week, Karen. You said, and I quote, as soon as the old lady is out of the way, we'll renovate this place and sell or rent it. Either way, it'll be good income. Karen's face paled again while Thomas stared at her in disbelief. Karen? Thomas's voice was laced with doubt. You said that? Before Karen could respond, Mr. Fernandez interjected. Mr. Silvera, Mrs. Fisher, he addressed Thomas and Karen. I must inform you that under the current circumstances, you are facing potentially serious charges. Elder abuse as it occurred here can result in 5 to 10 years in prison in this state. A heavy silence fell over the room. Through the window, Dorothy could see some neighbors still watching the house, likely commenting on the unusual scene unfolding that afternoon. However, the lawyer continued, Mrs. Silvera has expressed a desire to consider an out-of-court settlement, primarily given that you, Mr. Silvera, are her son. Dorothy nodded slowly. Despite everything, Thomas was still her son, the baby she had cradled in her arms, the boy she had taught to ride a bike, the teenager whose dreams she had encouraged. What would the terms be? Thomas asked, his voice barely audible. Mr. Fernandez consulted his notes. A public retraction and apology in the local newspaper. Financial restitution for emotional and material damages caused. A 5-year restraining order, allowing contact only under controlled circumstances, and 200 hours of community service in a nursing home for both of you. Karen began to protest, but Thomas silenced her with a gesture. And if we don't accept? Then, the lawyer replied calmly, we will proceed with a full criminal case, with all the evidence we have and the testimonies of neighbors who witnessed what happened today. I should add that several were filming with their phones. Dorothy watched her son's face, searching for any sign of the boy she once knew. For a moment their eyes met, and Dorothy saw something she hadn't expected, genuine shame. Mom? Thomas finally said, his voice choked. No. Dorothy interrupted, raising her hand. I don't want to hear apologies right now, Thomas. What you did today, what you plan to do, that doesn't get resolved with a few words. Oscar placed a hand on his sister's shoulder in a gesture of silent support. What you don't understand, Dorothy continued, is that it was never about money for me. It was always about family, about respect, about dignity. And you took that away from me. Dorothy slowly rose from her chair, leaning on the cane she rarely used but felt necessary now. Mr. Fernandez, I accept the terms you proposed. Thomas, Karen, you have 48 hours to remove your belongings from this house. From now on, this is my exclusive residence. Turning to Oscar, she added, could you help me take some clothes and essentials to your house? I'll stay with you until I decide what to do with this property. Oscar nodded, visibly proud of his sister's resolve. Dorothy walked slowly to the door, stopping only to take one last look at Thomas. 45 years, son. I gave you 45 years of my life. All I asked in return was respect. With those words, she left the room, shedding the weight of betrayal, but carrying with her the certainty that, at 74, she had finally learned to defend her own dignity. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions and activities for Dorothy. Staying at Oscar's comfortable house in the military neighborhood, she oscillated between moments of profound sadness and surprising determination. Her brother and his military friends became her informal personal guard, accompanying her in all necessary activities. On a particularly sunny morning, while having coffee on the porch, Oscar handed Dorothy the local newspaper. On the third page, prominently displayed, was the retraction and apology signed by Thomas and Karen. Thomas Silvera and Karen Fisher Silvera would like to express our deepest regret for the inappropriate and disrespectful treatment directed at Mrs. Dorothy Silvera. We acknowledge our mistake and publicly apologize not only to Mrs. Silvera, but also to the community that witnessed our undignified actions. We have begun our community service at local nursing homes as part of our commitment to restoration and awareness of respect for the elderly. Dorothy carefully folded the newspaper after reading it. Her face remained impassive, but her eyes revealed the complexity of her emotions. They started community service yesterday, Oscar informed. Thomas is at Santa Teresina Nursing Home, and Karen is at the Elderly Haven, different institutions as determined by the judge. Dorothy nodded silently, sipping her tea. After a few moments, she finally spoke. "Do you think they truly regret it, Oscar? Or are they just fulfilling the agreement to avoid prison?" Oscar considered the question carefully before responding. "I think Thomas is genuinely ashamed. I saw that in his eyes when we left the house, Karen. Well, she seems more concerned with social consequences than with the act itself." "She has always been like that," Dorothy agreed. "From day one, I sensed something calculating about her. Maybe I should have been firmer, set boundaries." "Don't blame yourself, Dorothy," Oscar gently interrupted. "You did what any mother would do, gave your son space to live his adult life. You couldn't foresee that it would result in what happened." That same day, Dorothy and Oscar met with Mr. Fernandez to discuss the next steps. The lawyer's office, located in a historic building in downtown, exuded seriousness and competence. "The documents for the restraining order have already been processed," Mr. Fernandez informed, adjusting his glasses as he reviewed the papers on his desk. "And regarding your house, Mrs. Silvera, what do you intend to do?" Dorothy took a deep breath, her decision made after nights of reflection. "I want to sell it. I have many memories there, both good and bad, but now I need a fresh start." "A wise decision," remarked Mr. Fernandez. "I can recommend some trustworthy realtors. The real estate market is hot, and your property is in an excellent location." "And what about the other properties?" Oscar asked. "I plan to keep 2 as investments," Dorothy replied with newfound confidence. "The third, that little house by the beach, I want to turn it into a day center for the elderly, a place where people my age can gather, chat, and engage in activities." Oscar smiled, impressed by his sister's strength and vision. "That's very noble, Mrs. Silvera," commented Mr. Fernandez. "If I may suggest, we could structure this as a foundation. There would be tax benefits and the possibility of expanding the project in the future." "A foundation," Dorothy repeated, thoughtful. "Yes, I like that idea. The Silver Dignity Foundation. To help seniors facing situations like mine, but who don't have a general brother or resources to defend themselves." The following weeks were dedicated to bringing these plans to fruition. Dorothy visited several houses until she found one she liked, a single-story building with a beautiful garden in a quiet community for people over 60. It wasn't as large as her old residence, but it was perfect for her new phase. The sale of her old house went quickly and for an above-expected price. As she oversaw the removal of the last personal items, Dorothy found the jewelry box that Karen had confiscated. Miraculously, all the pieces were there, including the engagement ring Victor had given her 47 years ago. Holding the delicate ring between her fingers, Dorothy was flooded with memories. Would Victor have been proud of her? Would he have approved of her recent decisions? Dorothy believed he would. Victor always valued courage and dignity above all else. As she left the house for the last time, Dorothy did not look back. Instead, she gazed at the blue spring sky, feeling a freedom she hadn't experienced in years. 6 months passed since the incident. Dorothy's new home in the Alvarado condominium had transformed into a true sanctuary. The previously white and impersonal walls now displayed her favorite paintings and new works she had created in the art classes she had begun attending. The garden, her new passion project, was blooming with vibrant colors. Dorothy spent hours among the plants, feeling the earth beneath her fingers, connecting with the life that blossomed at her command. It was an apt metaphor for her own situation. After a harsh winter, her life was also blooming once again. On that particular morning, Dorothy was preparing for an important meeting at the headquarters of the newly established Silver Dignity Foundation. The small office, set up in the renovated beach house, had already begun serving vulnerable seniors, offering legal assistance and psychological support. As she adjusted her pearl necklace, a gift she had given herself on her 75th birthday celebrated the previous month, Dorothy heard the doorbell ring. It was Oscar, punctual as always, ready to accompany her to the meeting. "You look radiant," he remarked upon seeing her. Dorothy smiled. "That's what happens when we free ourselves from unnecessary burdens." On the way to the foundation, Oscar casually mentioned, "I heard news about Thomas yesterday." Dorothy kept her eyes on the scenery passing by the car window, but Oscar noticed how her fingers tightened slightly around her bag in her lap. "How is he?" "Surprisingly well, considering everything. He completed 100 hours of community service at Santa Teresina Nursing Home. The director called to say he has been showing a genuine talent for working with the elderly." "Really?" Surprise was evident in Dorothy's voice. "Yes, apparently he organized a reading program and is helping several residents write their memoirs. The director said he seems transformed." Dorothy absorbed the information in silence. Part of her wanted to rejoice in her son's possible redemption, but another part remained cautious, protecting her newly recovered heart. "And Karen?" Oscar hesitated. "They separated. From what I heard, she quit community service after 30 hours and left town. Thomas filed for divorce." "I understand," Dorothy said simply. Arriving at the foundation, Dorothy was warmly welcomed by the small team she had hired. Among them was Donna Lourdes, her former neighbor, who was now coordinating the home visit program for isolated seniors. The meeting flowed productively, discussing the expansion of services and a potential partnership with the local university for a research project on dignified aging. Dorothy participated actively, offering ideas and insightful questions. During a coffee break, Dorothy's assistant approached her discreetly. "Mrs. Silvera, a letter arrived for you this morning. From the sender, it appears to be from your son." Dorothy accepted the envelope with slightly trembling hands. "Thank you, Marina. I'll read it later." But the letter remained in her bag throughout the meeting, almost a physical presence demanding attention. Only upon returning home hours later did Dorothy finally find the courage to open it. Sitting in her favorite armchair, with a cup of tea beside her, she carefully slid her finger under the flap of the envelope. Thomas's handwriting was instantly recognizable, the same one she had helped him perfect when he was in 3rd grade. "Dear Mom, I know these words may mean little after what I did. There are not enough excuses for my behavior, and I won't write pages trying to justify myself. The truth is simple and painful. I have failed as a son and as a human being. These past months of service at Santa Teresina Nursing Home have opened my eyes in ways I can't adequately describe. I've met extraordinary people who, despite their age and difficulties, maintain dignity, humor, and wisdom. People like you, Mum. Mr. Almeida, 83, taught me to play chess and shares stories of World War II. Mrs. Cecilia, 91, is teaching me to crochet. Every day I learn something new, but mostly I learn about respect and empathy. Lessons you tried to teach me for 45 years that I selfishly ignored. I don't expect your forgiveness. I'm not even asking for it yet, as I know I must earn it first. This letter is simply to let you know I'm trying to be a better person. The kind of person you always believed I could be. With love and remorse, Thomas." Dorothy carefully folded the letter and placed it on the side table. A solitary tear slid down her wrinkled face, but it was not a tear of sadness. It was the recognition that even in the most painful situations, there was the possibility of growth and transformation. She was still not ready to respond to the letter. Perhaps she never would be, but knowing that Thomas was finding his own path to redemption brought a certain peace. That night, Dorothy dreamed of Victor. He was wearing his uniform, young-like in the photograph she cherished, smiling with pride. "You've always been the strongest of us," he said in the dream. "I always knew you'd find your way." Dorothy woke with the first ray of sunlight, feeling strangely light and determined. She picked up her sketchbook and began to outline the contours of the next phase of her life. The first anniversary of the Silver Dignity Foundation was celebrated with a small ceremony in the gardens of the beach house, now completely renovated to house the organization's activities. A white tent had been set up among the palm trees, and tables adorned with wildflowers accommodated 50 guests, including staff, volunteers, beneficiaries, and supporters. Dorothy, wearing an elegant blue dress and her inseparable pearl necklace, circulated among the guests with surprising energy for her 75 years. Her hair, which she had decided to stop dyeing, showcased a natural silver tone that matched her new outlook on life. "Dorothy, you need to see this," called Oscar, approaching with a newspaper in hand. The memoir writing program at Santa Teresina won the city's Best Social Initiative Award. Dorothy took the newspaper and read the article attentively. The program, coordinated by Thomas, had helped 20 seniors publish their memoirs in a collection that was being used in schools to promote intergenerational dialogue. The accompanying photo showed Thomas alongside a group of smiling seniors, all holding copies of the newly published book. "He looks good," Dorothy commented, handing the newspaper back to her brother. "Different? He is," Oscar confirmed. "I spoke with the director of the nursing home last week. Thomas completed his 200 hours of community service 3 months ago, but continues to volunteer there. He's even considering pursuing a degree in gerontology." Dorothy nodded thoughtfully. She still hadn't responded to Thomas's letter, nor was she sure if she ever would. Some wounds were too deep to heal completely. But knowing that something positive had emerged from that painful situation brought a certain peace. "Mrs. Silvera?" The voice of young Marina, now the assistant director of the foundation, interrupted her thoughts. "It's time for your speech." Dorothy made her way to the small stage set up under the tent. As she ascended the steps, she politely declined the assisting arm offered by one of the guests. Small gestures of independence had become important to her. Before the microphone, Dorothy observed the attentive faces looking at her. People who a year ago were strangers now formed an integral part of her new life. She took a deep breath and began, "A year ago I found myself at a crossroads I never expected to face at 74. Betrayal from where we least expect it is always the most painful. But as I've learned throughout my life, our greatest challenges often turn into our greatest opportunities." She paused, her eyes scanning the audience. "The Silver Dignity Foundation was born not only from my personal pain, but from the recognition that many seniors quietly face similar or worse situations. In just 12 months, we've assisted over 100 vulnerable seniors, offering legal aid, emotional support, and above all, a space where aging is treated with the respect it deserves." The audience applauded, and Dorothy smiled before continuing. "Our new assisted living program will start next month, providing a dignified and affordable alternative for seniors who need some support but wish to maintain their independence. And I am particularly proud to announce the establishment of the Victor Silvera Scholarship in Gerontology, which will annually fund the training of a professional dedicated to improving the quality of life in old age." Oscar, in the front row, smiled upon hearing his late brother-in-law's name honored in such a way. "I've learned that it's never too late to start over. It's never too late to defend our dignity. It's never too late to turn pain into purpose." Dorothy's voice grew stronger. "At 75, I discovered a new mission and with it, a new joy for living. This is just the beginning." The applause that followed was warm and prolonged. Dorothy stepped down from the stage feeling light, as if an important circle had closed in her life. The celebration continued into the afternoon, with live music and shared stories. As the sun began to set, Dorothy discreetly stepped away from the party and walked to the edge of the sea. She slipped off her shoes and felt the still warm sand beneath her feet. The waves gently broke on the shore, and the sky displayed a spectacular array of colors, orange, pink, and purple, that seemed painted especially for the occasion. "Would you be proud, Victor?" she murmured to the horizon. "I think so." In the distance, she saw a familiar figure walking along the beach towards her. Even from afar, she immediately recognized the silhouette of Thomas. He stopped a few meters away, as if waiting for permission to approach. Dorothy made no gesture, but she also didn't step back. They stood there for a few moments, mother and son, separated by more than just the meters of sand between them, but linked by decades of shared history. Finally, Thomas slowly approached until he was just 2 steps away. "Congratulations on the foundation, Mom," he said simply. What you've built here is extraordinary. Dorothy looked at her son, noticing the new wrinkles around his eyes, the hair beginning to grey at the temples. Thank you, Thomas. I saw that you created a scholarship in Dad's name, he continued. He would have been honored. Your father always believed in the importance of serving others, Dorothy replied. It's his legacy. A silence settled between them, filled only by the rhythmic sound of the waves. It was not a comfortable silence, but it also didn't carry the tension of months ago. It was a silence of uncertain possibilities. I received your letter, Dorothy finally said. Thomas nodded. I didn't expect a response. I still don't have one, she admitted. But I read about your work at Santa Teresina. It seems you found something meaningful there. A small smile appeared on Thomas's face. I did. The residents taught me more than I could have imagined. And each day I remember something you taught me that I didn't value enough. Dorothy felt a complex mix of emotions: pride, sadness, caution. Life is long, Thomas. We have time to learn, to change, to repair damage when possible. That's what I hope to do, he responded simply. In the distance, Oscar waved from the porch, signaling that the party was coming to an end. Dorothy gestured that she would return shortly. I need to go back, she said to Thomas. We have guests. Thomas nodded, understanding. Of course. I don't want to intrude on your moment. Dorothy began to walk away, but paused after a few steps and turned back. Next Sunday, I'm organizing a lunch for the Foundation's volunteers. We start at noon. It was the closest to an invitation she could offer at that moment. Thomas understood the significance. I would love to help, he replied, not pressing for more. Dorothy continued on her way back to the party, feeling the late afternoon sun on her back. She didn't know what the future held for her relationship with Thomas, or if she would ever fully forgive him. But she had learned that life rarely offers simple answers or definitive endings. Instead, it provides moments of pain, moments of joy, moments of new beginnings. At 75 years old, Dorothy Silvera had discovered that her story was not just about betrayal and pain, but about resilience, dignity, and the extraordinary capacity of the human spirit to heal and flourish, even after the deepest wounds. As she returned to the porch where her guests awaited her, Dorothy smiled. This was not the life she had planned for her old age, but it was a life she now embraced fully, with all its imperfections, surprises, and unwritten possibilities. If you enjoyed this story of overcoming challenges and new beginnings, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. Your reactions inspire us to continue bringing stories that touch the heart and make us reflect on life. Until next time.